I'm going to start going over the first two because I think we should be okay on those two, and then I'll go a little bit slower when we get to the 3 and 4, okay? So number one, we're going to group together the first two terms, right? We're completing the square here. Group together these first two terms, move the 51 to the other side. So x squared plus 14x, leave that space, equals 51. To fill that space, I'm going to take, well, first of all, there's nothing attached to the x squared, so I don't have to take anything out. To fill that space, I'm going to take the 14, I'm going to divide it by 2. That's 7, and then square it. 7 squared is 49. I'm going to add it here and here. I get x squared plus 14x plus 49, which is the same thing as 7 squared, equals 100. Factor the left side. Square root the first term. Square root the last term. Take the sign from the middle, put it in the parentheses, and square it. Equals 100. And then solve. Square root both sides, putting a plus and minus on the right side. X plus 7 would equal plus and minus square root of 100, which is 10. This means x equals negative 7 plus 10 and negative 7 minus 10, or 3 and negative 17. Those are the two values for your x. Okay, then comes number 2. Number 2, do the same first step. Move that to the other side. X squared plus 14x equals, this time it's 38. No number attached again. I already know 7 divided by 2 is 49. I can add the 49 to the left and to the right. I already know this factored as x plus 7 squared equals 87. Square root both sides, putting a plus and minus in front of the 87, and I get x plus 7 equals plus and minus the square root of 87. So 87 is divisible by 3. 3 goes in there 29 times, but then it stops. So I'm going to leave it as plus minus square root 87. Subtract the 7, and I can either write the answer as negative 7 minus square root 87, and negative 7 plus square root 87, or negative 87 minus 7 and positive 87 minus 7. Either of those formats work as far as your answers go. Questions on any of those, either of those? Because then obviously we get into the numbers on the front. All right, here's something about number 3 that makes your life a lot easier. All of these numbers are divisible by 5, right? Do we see that? So I can actually take and divide every number by 5 as long as I also go on the other side of the equal sign, which is 0, and then simplify it. So this is gone. This becomes 4. This becomes 12 equals 0. As long as I can divide every single term by that number, including what's on the other side of the equal sign, I have not altered my equation. I made it simpler to solve, but I didn't change the value. So now I'm going to complete the square. X squared plus 4x on the left, 12 on the right. 4 divided by 2 squared is 2 squared, which is 4. Add that here, add that here. Factor the left side. X plus 2 squared equals 16. Square root both sides, putting the plus and minus, and I get x plus 2 equals plus and minus 4. So x equals negative 2 plus 4 and negative 2 minus 4. This is 2. This is negative 6. And those are my answers. If I had left the 5 at the beginning, my answers should be the same. I just would have to reduce at the end, but they should end up being the same. Okay, 4 is not like that. 4, if I take out, which I do have to take it out, I'm going to have to take out the 3 after I move the 4 to the other side. Okay, I cannot divide all these by 3 and keep them whole numbers. So I'm going to work this method. I'm going to take out the 3, x squared. This becomes negative 8 over 3x. Leave the space equals negative 4. Now to fill this space, I have to take 8/3, divide it by 2, which is the same thing as multiplying by a half. 2 goes into 8 4 times, and this becomes 4/3. Then square it, and I get 16/9. That's what I am going to add in. Change the color. I'm going to add that in here. And remember, you can also keep it 4/3 squared to help you with that factoring step. I'm also going to add it to the right. But before I do that, I have to multiply it by the 3 I took out at the front. So then the 3 goes into the 9 3 times, and I'm really adding 16/3. So I'm going to keep working that right side. -4 plus 16/3. 4/1 has to be multiplied by 3. And I get -12/3 plus 16/3, which is 4/3. So left-hand side, 3x squared minus 8/3 x plus 16/9, or 4/3 squared, equals 4/3. Factor that left side. 3 square root of x squared is x. Square root of 16/9 goes back to that 4/3. Put the minus between from the middle term, equals 4/3. Now that's in standard form. That's complete the square part. Now I got to solve it. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3 or multiply by 1/3. X minus 4/3 squared would equal 4/9. Square root both sides, putting a plus and minus in front of that 4/9, and I get x minus 4/3 equals plus and minus the square root of 4, which is 2, over the square root of 9, which is 3. Add that 4/3, and I have two equations here. I have positive 2/3 plus 4/3, and I have negative 2/3 plus 4/3. So 6/3 is 2. And 2/3 stays 2/3. So the solutions for this one are 2/3 and 2. Yep.
I got that answer, but I divided like we did in like the problem before, but I just like had a fraction on the end.
That's fine. As long as you remember to divide every single term by that 3, it's fine.
Okay.
What happens is that sometimes there's a number over on the other side of the equal sign, and people forget to divide that by what you're taking out. So just be careful. As long as you divide every term by it, it's fine.
So I can just divide every term and then get rid of the 3 in the front, right?
You just don't forget. Yeah, just don't forget to do it on the other side. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah, because what you're doing is putting the 4 over the 3, you're moving that to the other side. That takes care of it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, and then the 8 is divided by 3. So you're doing that step in a different order, but you're still doing that step. Questions? Okay, I'm going to do 1 or 2 of the homework questions now. I'm going to get into the notes, and then I'll go back and finish it. But we obviously have to get through the lesson for today.
I realized when you took the, I was going to say, I don't think you have to do mine. I think I beat x and divided it, or multiplied it times 1/2. I forgot to square it.
Aha.
I just multiplied it by times 1/2, so I think that's just what messed me up.
Okay, so that's 6, yeah?
Can you still go over that one?
I was going to say, Vanessa still asked for that one, right? Okay, so let's do that one. I'm going to do 6. I don't think it's the same for everybody, but the 1's already on the other side. Then I'm going to take out the 4. Leave the space. Again, 1's still on the other side. Now there's a 1 here. Take that 1, divide it by 2. That's 1/2. Square it. That's 1/4. That's what I'm adding in here. Normally I add it over here, but I have to multiply by this 4 first. 4 and 1/4 means I'm just adding 1. So on the left, 4 is still on the front. X squared minus x plus 1/4 equals 1 plus 1, which is 2. Now that 1/4 is the same thing as 1/2 squared, right? So think about that too. I could have kept this as 1/2 squared to make it easier. What's about to happen? Square root the x squared, square root the 1/4, which is at 1/2. Take the sign from the middle, put it in parentheses, square it, equals 2. Now divide both sides by 4. I get x minus 1/2 squared equals 1/2. If you leave it as 2 over 4, the next step is easier because you're going to have to square root it. If you make it 1/2, you're going to have to rationalize. So let's say I left it as 2/4. When I go to square root it, it's plus and minus. I get x minus 1/2 equals plus and minus root 2 over root 4, which is 2. Then I add the 1/2. And my two answers are 1/2 plus root 2 over 2 and 1/2 minus root 2 over 2. Webb-Assign took it a step further by taking out the 1/2, and you would get 1 plus root 2 and then 1/2 1 minus root 2. But I would have taken either answer, okay? If you divided it by, if you simplified this, and then you go to square root both sides, I get x minus 1/2 equals plus and minus the square root of 1, which is 1, over root 2. And you can't leave the root 2 in the bottom. So we had to rationalize it. That's what made this one tricky. Multiply the top and the bottom, and I get x, add the 1/2, equals 1/2 plus and minus 1 times root 2, which is root 2, over root 2 times root 2, which is 2. Then you get the same answer. So if you see that happening, like if you see something that has a perfect square in the bottom, but you can also simplify it, wait to simplify it, because you're going to end up square rooting it. Okay, so like I said, I don't want to rush through the notes. I'm going to go to the notes, and then I'll come back to these examples, and I'll work them out during my lunch, and I'll post them with the video, okay? All right, so Taji, you asked for this one. It's already said equal to 0, but there's a I'm thinking the other way around. Now we're back to complete the square. I got to move this one over here. Negative x squared plus x, bump the 1 to the other side. Now I've got to take out a negative 1, and it comes off of both the x squared and the x. Take that negative 1, ignoring the sign because we're going to square it. That's 1. 1 divided by 2 is 1/2. Squared is 1/4. Add the 1/4 here. Again, you can keep it as 1/2 squared to remind you for the next step. And normally I'd add it over here, but I have to multiply by negative 1 first, which means I'm subtracting 1/4. Negative 1 becomes negative 4 over 4, and the left side there is negative 5/4. Right side, negative x squared minus x plus 1/4 or 1/2 squared. Factor that left side, square root of x. X squared is x, square root of 1/4 is that 1/2. Sign from the middle, put it in the parentheses and square it, equals negative 5/4. Now I got to multiply everything by negative 1 to get rid of this. I get x minus 1/2 squared equals 5/4. Square root both sides, putting a plus and minus on the right. Square root of 5 over square root of 4, which is 2. Then add the 1/2. So when it's separated out, I get 1/2 minus root 5 over 2, 1/2 plus root 5 over 2.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
They said the answer was no solution.
For that question?
That's what I thought. Is that number 8?
No, that's number, yeah, wait. Yes, that's number 8.
Mine said no solution.
Okay, that's totally wrong. Let me double check. Oh, that's our time. All right, I will. Okay, here's Brianna's question number 10. So you're going to bump the 10 to the other side. And something easy to do here is divide everything by 2. So they're smaller numbers, but you don't have to do this. This would be 2x to the second minus 3x equals 5. Now take out the 2. Take that 3/2, divide it by 2, which is multiplying by 1/2, and then square it. 3/4 squared is 9/16. So I'm going to add that here. I'm going to keep the 3/4 squared here to remind me for when I factor. And then I would normally add 9/16 to the other side, but I have to multiply by the 2 first. making it 9/8. So I'm going to rewrite the left side, factoring. So square root of x squared is x. Square root of 9/16 is at 3/4. Take the minus from the middle, put it in parentheses and square it. And then 5 plus 9/8 becomes 48 plus 9/8, or 49/8. Take and divide both sides by 2, which is multiplying by a half over here. X minus 3/4 squared equals 49/16. Square root both sides, putting a plus and minus. X minus 3/4 equals plus and minus square root of 49, which is 7, over square root of 16, which is 4. Add the 3/4. So 2 answers here, 3/4 minus 7/4 and 3/4 plus 7/4. Negative 4/4, which is -1. 10/4, which is 5/2. Okay, now, so I don't need to do 6, right, because it's already done. Yeah, okay. Vanessa's questions. So number 1, bump the 32 to the other side. Find this missing term by dividing the 4 by 2 and squaring it. 2 squared is 4. Add that here and here. Factor the left side. Square root of x squared is x. Square root of 4 is 2. Sign from the middle is plus. Square root both sides, putting a plus and minus. Plus and minus 6. And then subtract that 2. And I get x equals -2 plus 6 and -2 minus 6. 4, -8. Okay, 6 we answered on the last slide. 5. So again, something easy to do here is divide all this by 3. So it simplifies it into a little bit smaller numbers. Now I have to take off this 3. So 3x squared, this becomes divided by 3, and it's 2. Leave that space, equals -1. Take the -2, ignore the sign, so 2 divided by 2 squared, 1 squared, which is 1. Add the 1 here. Normally I add it over here, but I have to multiply by the 3 first. So I'm adding 3 instead. 3x squared minus 2x plus 1 equals 2. Factor the left side, x, 1 minus from the middle term, squared. Then divide both sides by 3. Square root both sides, putting the plus and minus. And I get x minus 1 equals plus and minus root 2 over root 3. Now the root 3 can't stay there, so I rationalize by multiplying the top and the bottom by root 3. X minus 1 equals plus and minus root 6 over 3, and then add that 1. So 1 minus root 6 over 3, 1 plus root 6 over 3. Okay, number 10, move the 8 to the other side. Factor out the 5, minus 3/5. Take that 3/5, divide it by 2 or multiply by a half, square it, and I get 3/10 squared, which is 9 over 100. I'm going to write that 3/10 here to remind me for the factoring. Normally we're going to add the 9 over 100 here, but we have to multiply by 5 first. 5 goes into 100 20 times, so I'm adding 9/20. 8 over 1 becomes, so I have to multiply by 20, 160 over 20 plus 9 over 20, 169 over 20. So I get 5 square root the x squared, square root the 9 over 100, which is that 3/10. Take the sign from the middle, put in parentheses and square it, equals 169 over 20. Now divide both sides by 5, or multiply by a fifth. X minus 3/10 squared equals 169 over 100. Square root both sides. X minus 3/10 equals plus and minus 13 over 10. Add the 3/10, and I have two answers. 3 over 10 minus 13 over 10, and 3 over 10 plus 13 over 10. This gives me negative 10 over 10, or negative 1, and this gives me 16 over 10, or 8/5. All right, so 1/4, which is Gator colors, it makes me happy, is solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. So this is the fourth, right? So we did factoring, we did square roots, like where you had to square root both sides. We did complete the square, and now we're going to do the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula works every single time. So remember, factoring doesn't always work, right? If it's not factorable, it doesn't work. Complete the square always works, but sometimes it gets very complicated. And even root only works if you have a single variable, not if you have an x squared and an x. Quadratic works every time. This is the quadratic formula. So when you are given it in this format, ax squared plus bx plus c, meaning everything's on one side of the equation and it's set equal to 0, then the a is what's in front of the x, the b is what's in front of the a is what's in front of the x squared, the b is what's in front of the x, and the c is the constant that's by itself. And then this is your quadratic formula. Negative b plus and minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. If you are a person that can hear a song and memorize it, or that helps you remember things, simply go to YouTube and search for quadratic formula Pop Goes the Weasel. And they will sing you a song of negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a in Pop Goes the Weasel melody. I won't do that. You're welcome. Singing is not my strong suit. But if you want to go to YouTube, you can hear it. And then I guarantee you hear it on repeat, whether you want to or not. Okay? So if you don't have this memorized and you can memorize by song, do that. Okay? Pop Goes the Weasel, quadratic formula. All right, now let's use it. So the first thing is everything's got to get on one side. It's got to be set equal to 0, just like when we're factoring. Okay? If we look at number 1, it's already like that. So I identify the a is what's in front of the x squared. So the a is 1. The b is what's in front of the x, which is a negative 4. Make sure you take that negative. And the c is the number that's by itself, which is a positive 2. Now, quadratic formula, negative b plus and minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Negative 4 becomes positive 4, plus and minus the square root of b squared, negative 4 squared, minus 4 times 1 times 2, all over 2 times a, which is 1. Now we rely on our order of operations. I'm going to work innermost square root first. So I get 4 plus and minus the square root of, take care of the exponent, negative 4 times negative 4 is 16. And then negative 4 times 1 is negative 4, times 2 means minus 8, all over 2 times 1, which is 2. You with me so far? Then I simplify what's underneath the root. 4 plus and minus the square root of 16 minus 8, which is 8, over 2. I check to see if my root can be reduced. 8 is 2 and 4, 2 and 2. 2 2's goes to the outside, and I get 4 plus and minus 2 root 2, because there's a 2 left underneath, all over 2. Now we have two options from here. If all three parts of that are divisible by the same number, then I can reduce it. So 2 goes into itself once, 2 once, 4 twice. And I get 2 plus and minus root 2, which means 2 minus root 2, 2 plus root 2. The other thing I can do from here is split this into two fractions. 4 over 2 plus and minus 2 root 2 over 2, and then reduce. I still end up with the same answer. Questions on that one? So this process takes a little bit because there's a little bit of steps on there. It's easy to mess your signs up, so be careful. But this is foolproof. It works every time. Let's do number 2. What's my A?
1.
1. What's my B?
Negative
3. What's my C?
Negative 2.
Negative 2. It was already set to 0, which is why I dove right in, right? If it wasn't already set to 0, I'd have to do that first. Okay, now negative 3 is 3 plus and minus the square root of negative 3 squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2 times A. 3 plus and minus the square root of 9. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4 times negative 2 is a positive 8 this time over 2. 3 plus and minus the square root of 17 over 2. 17 is prime. It does not break down. So if this was an open-ended question in which you were submitting like a picture as an answer, I would have taken that. If it is fill in the blank or if it is multiple choice, you're going to see this as 3 over 2 minus root 17 over 2, comma 3 over 2 plus root 17 over 2. So keep in mind two different formats, both correct answers. Oh, let me see how WebAssign wants it. I think it's the second, but let me just make sure. Questions on that one while I'm checking? Okay, now we get to 3. You are not going to want to square with fractions, okay, or decimals, that kind of stuff. So the first thing we're going to do is go back to what we used to do and get rid of those. So how can I get rid of an over 3 and an over 4?
Multiply fraction.
Good. Least common denominator in this case would be what?
12.
12. I'm going to multiply everything by 12. So 3 goes into 12 4 times. 4 goes into 12 3 times. And then the 12 also has to get multiplied by the 3. I end up with 8x squared minus 3x equals 36. I need that 36 on the side with the other 2. So 8x squared minus 3x minus 36 equals 0. That's now in quadratic form. A is 8. B is negative 3. C is negative 36. Negative 3 becomes a positive 3 plus and minus the square root of negative 3 squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2 times A. 3 plus and minus the square root of 9. This is 32, so 32 times 36. $1,152, and it's positive because there's a negative 4 and a negative 36, all over 16. 3 plus and minus the square root of 1,152 plus 9 is, 1,161. all over 16. Now that 1161 is not even, so it's not divisible by 2. But if I test it for 3's, right, if I do 1 plus 1, that's 2, plus 6, that's 8, plus 1, that's 9, that's divisible by 3, which means this is divisible by 3. 3 would go into 11 3 times with a remainder of 2, into 26 8 times with a remainder of 2, into 21 7 times. Test that out again. 3 plus 8 is 11, plus 7 is 18. That's divisible by 3 as well. 3 goes in 1, 2, 9. 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 9 is 12. That's also divisible by 3. 43. And that's prime. So now I'm at 3 plus and minus. 1 pair of 3's comes to the outside. 43 times 3 is that square root. Oops, not plus and minus. All over 16. Now this cannot be reduced, right? 3 can't go into 16. So the way, and I just checked it, WebAssign just does it split. This would be 3 over 16 minus 3 root 129 over 16. And 3 over 16 plus 3 root 129 over 16.
But you would take it like the original one?
Like if it was a question in which you had to upload a picture, then this works for me too. Okay, there's no other way to get the plus and minus. There have to be the picture one. I would take either one of those. But WebAssign wants that second one, so just be careful. And if it's like standardized test, think you're taking your PSAT in 2 weeks, a standardized test would separate it out like the bottom one. Questions on any of those? So sometimes they get ugly, okay? Don't freak out. All right, last page. Number 4, x squared plus 10 plus 8x. Be careful, equals 0, sorry. Be careful with these because the only tricky part about this is that it's not in the right order. You would rewrite it as x squared plus 8x plus 10 equals 0, and then your a is 1, your b is 8, your c is 10. So, negative 8 plus and minus the square root of 8 squared minus 4 times 1 times 10 all over 2 times 1. Negative 8 plus and minus the square root of 64 minus 40 all over 2. Negative 8 plus and minus the square root of 24 over 2. 24 is 2 and 12, 2 and 6, 2 and 3. A pair of 2's goes to the outside. Negative 8 plus and minus 2. There's a 2 and a 3. So root 6 over 2. Simplify it because they're all divisible by 2. And I get negative 4 plus and minus root 6. Or split it and simplify it. Either order is fine. Again, you'll type that answer in as negative 4 minus root 6, negative 4 plus root 6.
Do they all have to be divisible by 2 to cancel it, or can just one of them be divisible by
Good question. So if I had something that was like negative 11 plus and minus 2 root 6 over 2, I can't keep it as 1 and cancel these. I can, however, split them and reduce just that side. So it'd be negative 11 over 2 plus and minus root 6. So unless they are all 3 divisible by the same number, you can't just divide into part of it. You'd have to split it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, last one, and this one takes extra work because I can't leave it as x plus 6 squared. I have to expand, FOIL that out, and then get all the terms to one side. So I'm going to start by expanding this. Again, do not distribute exponents into a sum or a difference, right? I can't say that's x squared plus 36. That's completely wrong. I missed the middle term. This becomes x squared plus 6x plus 36, or x squared plus 12x plus 36 equals negative 2x. That's still there. Add the 2x, so everything's on the same side. I cannot do the quadratic formula if it's not equal to 0. It has to be equal to 0. And get to work. So A is 1, B is 14, C is 36. Negative 14 plus and minus the square root of 14 squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2 times A. Negative 14 plus and minus the square root of 14 squared is 196. 4 times 36 is 144 over 2. 196 minus 144 is 52 over 2. 52 is 2 and 26, 2 and 13. Cancel the 2's, bring them out front. Negative 14 plus and minus 2 root 13 over 2. Either split and then reduce, or reduce and then split. Order doesn't matter. 2 goes in here 7 times and here once. Negative 7 plus and minus the square root of 13. If I had split it, negative 14 over 2 plus and minus 2 root 13 over 2. This is still negative 7. Those still cancel. Same answer. So I'd get negative 7 plus, or actually negative 7 minus root 13, negative 7 plus root 13. Hi, Mr. Sexton. Questions? We made it, folks. And 3 minutes to spare. So I'm going to go back to those homework questions. Everybody's okay, yes? If you don't have questions on homework, you can jump on into the web assign for tonight, 1.4c, and you can get started on it. If you're one of those people that asked for the homework questions, I'm going to go back to them.